You ever notice how some people seem to come into your life and slowly drain the warmth out of it? At first, they do not look toxic. They look hurt. They look misunderstood. They look like someone who just needs patience, kindness, and a little more time. And because you are strong, because you are caring, because you have a heart that does not give up easily, you stay. You listen. You forgive. You explain. You wait. You keep hoping that if you just love them well enough, they will become safe. But what hurts is this. Sometimes the very people you try hardest to understand are the ones who hurt you the most. And if that has ever happened to you, you already know the shame that comes after. You start asking yourself questions that cut deeper than the relationship itself. Why did I ignore the signs? Why did I keep making excuses? Why did I stay so long? Why do I keep attracting people like this? And maybe the hardest question of all is this. Is something wrong with me? That question sits quietly in the chest and grows heavier the longer you carry it. But listen carefully. There is nothing wrong with being kind. There is nothing wrong with wanting to see the good in people. There is nothing wrong with being patient. There is nothing wrong with hoping people can change. Those are not flaws. Those are beautiful parts of being human. The pain begins when those gifts are met by people who do not know how to handle them with care. Because strong people often become magnets for toxic relationships for a reason. Not because they are weak. Not because they are naive. Not because they deserve pain. But because they are often the ones who can tolerate what others would never stay for. They can explain away red flags. They can absorb emotional storms. They can carry more than their share. They can love through confusion. They can survive disappointment and still return with an open heart. And toxic people can feel that. They can sense who will give them another chance. They can sense who will forgive too quickly. They can sense who will stay too long. They can sense who will keep calling their behavior misunderstanding when it is really disrespect. That is one of the saddest truths about human nature. Sometimes people do not come close because they love your soul. Sometimes they come close because they know your boundaries are soft enough to push. And that is where strong people get hurt. Not because they are foolish, but because they are compassionate in a world that often rewards emotional hardness. They keep thinking, maybe this time will be different. They keep hoping, maybe they just need healing. They keep believing, if I stay calm enough, the peace will come back. But not every storm is asking to be calmed. Some storms are asking to be escaped. There is a difference between loving people and losing yourself inside of them. There is a difference between understanding someone and excusing every wound they keep reopening. There is a difference between being strong and being available for pain. And if no one has told you this clearly before, let me say it now. Your strength is not meant to be a storage place for other people's toxicity. You were not created to be the emotional landfill for someone else's unresolved chaos. You were not made to keep swallowing disrespect just because you know how to stay composed. You were not made to keep apologizing for wanting peace. The Stoics understood something many people still struggle with. They understood that the mind becomes fragile when it keeps surrendering its power. That what you allow repeatedly becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar often starts feeling normal. Even if it is destroying you. That is why toxic relationships are so dangerous. They do not always begin with obvious harm. They often begin with emotional confusion. A little praise here. A little neglect there. A little apology. A little hurt. A little warmth. A little coldness. And before long, you are not even sure what love feels like anymore. You are just trying to survive the mood swings of someone else's behavior. That is not intimacy. That is exhaustion. Strong people often stay because they see potential where others see patterns. They think, if I just keep showing up, this will become healthy. They think, if I love them enough, they will stop hurting me. They think, maybe they do not know better. They think, maybe I should be more understanding. And yes, understanding matters. But understanding without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Because at some point you have to ask yourself a very honest question. How many times do I have to be hurt before I stop calling it love? That question matters. Because real love does not require your silence. Real care does not reward your pain. Real connection does not keep asking you to abandon your own peace. If you are always the one adjusting, always the one forgiving, always the one calming, always the one rebuilding, then what you have is not balance. It is emotional labor. And too much emotional labor in the wrong place will hollow you out. This is why strong people need to learn a deeper form of strength. Not the strength to endure everything. Not the strength to explain away every wound. Not the strength to keep holding on even when your spirit is tired. But the strength to say, I see this clearly now. I know what this is costing me. I know what this is doing to my mind. I know that love should not feel like slow erosion. That is Stoic strength. Clear eyes, steady heart, firm boundaries, not coldness, not cruelty, not revenge, just truth. And truth is often the thing toxic relationships cannot survive. Because when you stop explaining yourself endlessly, they lose control of the story. When you stop rescuing people from the consequences of their behavior, you start getting your life back. But healing is not instant. Sometimes after leaving or stepping back, you still miss them. You still wonder if you were too harsh. You still think about the good moments. You still ask if you could have done more. That is normal. Because the heart does not unlearn attachment overnight. Even when something is bad for you, it can still be hard to release. Especially when you loved sincerely. Especially when you hoped deeply. Especially when you stayed longer than you should have. And if you have ever loved someone who kept hurting you, then you know the grief is not just about the person. It is about the version of the relationship you kept hoping it could become. That is what makes it so painful. You are not only losing them, you are losing the dream, the promise, the future you imagined. That kind of grief is real. So do not rush your healing. Do not shame yourself for missing what was never safe. Do not call yourself stupid for being loyal. Do not call yourself weak for wanting to believe in people. You are human, and that is enough. But now you need wisdom. You need to learn that not every familiar bond is healthy. Not every intense connection is love. Not every apology is change. Not every tear is remorse. Not every I need you is genuine care. Some people only know how to consume. They take your patience. They take your time. They take your energy. They take your softness. And when you finally grow tired, they call you difficult. That is how toxic people protect themselves. They make your boundaries look like the problem. They make your clarity look like selfishness. They make your peace look like rejection. But peace is not rejection. Peace is protection. And you are allowed to protect what is precious. You are allowed to protect your mind from constant chaos. You are allowed to protect your heart from repeated harm. You are allowed to protect your soul from people who only arrive to empty it. That does not make you mean. That makes you awake. The Stoics would tell you that power begins the moment you stop surrendering your inner life to what other people choose to do. Their choices are theirs. Their behavior is theirs. Their dysfunction is theirs. Your job is to respond with dignity. And sometimes dignity means distance. Sometimes dignity means silence. Sometimes dignity means leaving without drama. Sometimes dignity means refusing one more conversation that only ends in the same wound. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom born from pain. And if this is hitting you deeply, it may be because you have been the strong one for too long. The one who keeps understanding. The one who keeps forgiving. The one who keeps hoping. The one who keeps holding the weight of everyone else's mess while pretending you are fine. But you do not have to do that forever. You are allowed to outgrow toxic attachment. You are allowed to stop confusing endurance with love. You are allowed to choose peace even when other people call it distance. Because real strength is not being endlessly available. Real strength is knowing when your heart needs shelter. So if you keep attracting toxic relationships, do not first ask, what is wrong with me? Ask instead, who do I keep giving access to? Where am I ignoring patterns? Why am I calling pain loyalty? What part of me still believes I must earn love by suffering? Those are the questions that lead to healing. Not shame. Not blame. Not self-hatred. Healing. And healing begins the moment you decide that your life is worth more than repeated emotional damage. That your kindness deserves safety. That your loyalty deserves reciprocity. That your strength deserves peace. You do not need to become harder to survive this world. You need to become clearer. Clear about who deserves you. Clear about what you allow. Clear about what you will no longer call love. Because when strong people finally learn that lesson, everything changes. They do not become cold. They become wise. They do not become unavailable. They become protected. They do not stop loving. They just stop bleeding for people who only know how to take. And that is the Stoic truth. Not everyone who enters your life deserves to stay. Not every bond deserves your sacrifice. Not every hurt deserves a second chance. Some relationships are not a test of how much you can endure. They are a test of whether you will finally choose yourself. If this spoke to your heart, comment, "I choose peace." And remember, strength is not staying where you are slowly breaking.